Nice to see you. All right, welcome everyone to the inaugural meeting of the Global Working Group on Anticipatory Action for Displacement, hosted kindly by Anticipation Hub colleagues, jointly with the whole co-hosts of the working group, IOM and Danish Refugee Council. So just to give you a brief overview of the run of show today, we will start with some opening remarks from the Anticipation Hub. Head of the Hub, Alessandra, is with us today. Then we will move into the introduction of the main working group focal points from IOM and DRC. Then we will do a bit of a scene setting. What is the current state of play when it comes to anticipatory action for displacement? We would love to get to know you guys as an audience. So there will be a bit of a polling questions that we will ask to you guys to understand a bit better your connection to this topic and which organizations you represent, before we move into a bit of a co-working session with breakout groups under the main working group technical pillars. And then we move towards session closure and next steps for the working group. Without further ado, handing over to Alessandra. And while we do the opening and the introductions, we welcome you already to join us online at Mentimeter, where we will be heading into shortly. Over to you, Alessandra.
Thank you, Lina, and good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. Please, as you join, just introduce yourself in the chat so we can start to get to know each other a bit more. Very briefly, I was asked the reason why we in the Hub are particularly excited to launch and host this forum today. Well, let me give you maybe 3 quick points. First and foremost, we see global rise of displacement in the making, with predicted over 6.7 million people being displaced in the next 2 years. So definitely displacement is something to which agencies are looking into. And displacement oftentimes it's caused and driven by economics and climate stresses and drivers. And so why we are here today, this group and these actions and energy has been in the making for quite some time. So we are explicitly proud to be launching it today because it's the time that we are really looking at seeking of integrating anticipatory actions to address some of the causes and impact of displacement. And quite interesting as well as of today, in the context of another working group of the Anticipation Hub, we will be launching the Anticipation Hub, the Anticipatory Action Toolkit in fragile and conflict setting, a collaboration that has been going on with the International Water Management Institute and the Climate Center. And what does it mean? It's really that there is an opportunity to apply anticipatory action approaches in new setting, in complex setting, to really to being able to reduce humanitarian suffering and really support the livelihoods of displaced people around the world. And the last point, it's particularly more so important and prominent in these days, given the current funding constraints and cuts that we are going through within the humanitarian sector, which force us and also give us an opportunity really to coordinate way more and better. And so, yeah, it's really an invitation and an excitement to see so many of you interested in joining this first conversation, and a huge undertaking, thanks and appreciations to our colleague from DRC and IOM. They are taking the lead to start this work, and very much looking forward to engaging with you around this work over the next couple of months and years to come. So thank you, and we'll pass the mic over to Lina.
Thanks a lot, Alessandra. Thanks also to the wider Anticipation Hub team for hosting this platform, this community of practice working group, and creating space for what we think is very necessary dialogue and coordination. All right, so we will move into a bit of a scene setting. So why was this need for a dedicated coordination platform kind of identified by the Anticipation Hub, by the wider community of practice on anticipatory action, by IOM and DRC as the current co-host of this platform? There is currently in the anticipatory action space somewhat of a displacement blind spot. We're waiting for the 2024 Anticipation Hub Global Overview Report to be finalized. It will be launched in June. But the last report indicated that we only have one active framework, anticipatory action plan, looking at population movements, human mobility. While we obviously have seen anticipatory action gradually reaching scale, gradually being mainstreamed, but still very much with a focus on climate shocks. So we all know that anticipatory action was born out of the climate space with a focus on using weather forecasts, predictions of weather extreme events to inform anticipatory action. In the meantime, obviously, a lot of work has been done in producing displacement forecasts, so working on predictive modeling to be able to predict spikes in displacement. That comes with the question, what do we do with this early warning information? How do we make best use of displacement forecasts if we have access to them? So this working group is a bit of a result of dialogue that has been starting over the past 2 years. So the Anticipation Hub hosted a first global workshop on anticipatory action for displacement in 2023. The same was then repeated last year, 2024, in December, where really the decision was made to kind of formalize this dialogue and kind of formalize the coordination around this topic, seeing very much a need to have continuous dialogue around this space, essentially. IOM and DRC were then selected as co-hosts of this working group. Why? Because we are obviously organizations, agencies that are really truly mandated to enable action, operations, programming in the space of displacement. So be it looking at prevention of displacement, looking at addressing root causes of population movements, moving into emergency assistance, emergency response to displacement crises, and then also enabling effective, durable solutions to displacement. We then did a soft launch of the Global Working Group at the HMPW just last month, was it? Losing track of time. All right, so what is the current state of play? When it comes to displacement, as I said, we have seen great advancements in displacement forecasting, artificial intelligence, machine learning that supports kind of the development of these models, and we'll hear more about that later. Means we have growing potential, but still limited scope in terms of geographic coverage. So there's scope or potential to further scale these models to more context, but then also further potential for increased user uptake, right? Better usage of the displacement forecast to actually inform action. So we need a broader adoption of these displacement forecasts. In terms of application of anticipatory action for displacement, we're seeing that displacement is dynamic and complex. We maybe can't apply the rigid metrics and kind of the criteria we have developed for anticipatory action for climatic shocks, extreme weather events, be it droughts, floods, cyclones, the diversity we have started to work on to displacement settings, because they're more fluid, they're more complex, they're more dynamic. We also have two lenses for anticipatory action. We can see a displacement either as vulnerability, so looking at already displaced population groups as target groups of anticipatory action, or as impact. So we can try to address anticipatory action as humanitarian impact itself. We also see that we currently have quite fragmented approaches across different actors, so need for coordination and joint action. And the need to bridge two community of practice, one being kind of the core anticipatory action stakeholders that have been working in this space since the very beginning, and then the more newer actors on the block, displacement mandated agencies such as DRC, IOM, and UNHCR. Over to Stuart.
Thanks so much, Lina, and thanks, Alessandra, again for kicking us off. We're really excited to be co-chairing this new working group and to see so much interest from everybody online. Just to give you a bit of a sense of what we're aiming to achieve together and then how we will do that to set the stage for the rest of the conversation today, we wanted to walk through the key objectives and deliverables of the group. In line with the backdrop that Lina just painted, we really see now more than ever, especially given the complexity and chaos in the sector, that this is a time for collaboration and community exchange. We need to be able to make the most of the limited resources we have, but also really cut through, frankly, quite a lot of noise to deliver results together. So that's really what this forum is about: collaboration, coordination, and joint development of solutions. The focus on practical tools and guidance is going to be really key. We want this not just to be a place where we come together and build community and exchange experience, but actually support the delivery of results and impact on the ground. So we will hold ourselves as a group accountable to developing practical tools and guidance, and those resources will be driven by the needs identified through these conversations within this group. Finally, to the point of the comparatively limited evidence around AA and displacement settings, we need to strengthen the evidence base, both on what works and how to do it, but also how to make sure that we're actually leveraging AA to address displacement in its various forms around the world. So we'll be looking to both take advantage and synthesize existing evidence, but also generate new evidence together through our collaboration as a group. Next slide. What that will look like practically for those of you who are part of other working groups hosted by the Hub. This will not look particularly novel, but hopefully there's some comfort and familiarity here. We'll do monthly meetings for the core membership of this group, and we'll say a bit more later in this discussion on how we will constitute the membership and bring you all together on a regular basis. We'll also be hosting, sort of along the lines of all of the work of the different working groups in the Hub, a core set of resources online that people can access, contribute to, and hopefully utilize in their operations over time. As I mentioned, one of the core focuses is going to really be on developing outputs together. So that's going to be much of the focus in the monthly meetings, but also asynchronous work of different members who will sort of volunteer to work together to then bring things back to the group for validation and dissemination. And then critically, it's really important that we work together to develop and disseminate messaging for advocacy. That's actually one of the themes of the breakout groups today: how we talk about this work, how we convey the specificity of AA for displacement, and how we make sure as practitioners, as donors, as member states, that we're all aligned on what this issue requires collectively, and how we approach it together is essential now more than ever. So that's a really, really important function of the group. We will, and then I think this leads us right into the first Menti, where we'll learn a bit more about you and your organizations. We're going to bring together a wide range of practitioners who are either involved directly in AA displacement or interested in developing this capacity. So just to say, we're not trying to limit initially the membership to only those groups already active in this space. We just want to make sure that the displacement expertise is really strong in the group, and that those who are interested in developing that can do that through this forum.
Great, thanks, Stuart. Indeed, so we want to take the topic of anticipatory action a bit out of the usual chamber of, actors that are working in this space, and really bridge the gap with the displacement community, displacement mandated organizations such as us, and really contextualize anticipatory action from the logic of displacement risk management, the displacement continuum, which just follows a bit of a different logic when we compare it to kind of conventional disaster risk management, which, anticipatory action stakeholders have been more focused on, kind of integrating anticipatory action along the disaster or climate risk continuum. So there are contextual nuances when it comes to displacement settings that we really would like to work on, and happy to see so much interest in this topic from all of you. All right. As Stuart said, in order to really design this working group in the best possible way to suit your needs and the needs of this very, very important and exciting topic, we would like to understand who's actually here in the audience, who is interested in learning more about this topic, contributing to the joint kind of thought leadership when it comes to applying anticipatory action to displacement settings. So feel free to join us on the Mentimeter. Really curious to hear from you guys and see who's actually in the room. And we have quite a lot of participants with us today, which is really exciting to see. So I'll let this go a bit. I think in the meantime, Stuart, I'm noticing we didn't really introduce ourselves. So I'll start with that. Maybe I'm Annalena Hoon. I'm the global lead on Anticipatory Action with the Danish Refugee Council, DRC, supporting its headquarters in Copenhagen, but based in Geneva. Over to you, Stuart.
Thanks so much, Annalena. So hi, everyone. I'm Stuart Campbell. I'm a senior advisor with IOM focused on data impact strategy and partnerships. Some of you know me from a previous coordination life at OCHA, and it's really great to be here. And just to mention, online, you'll have seen them introducing themselves in the chat, but on the IOM side, we really have a whole of organization approach to anticipatory action. So my colleagues from the Climate Action Division and the Department of Humanitarian Response and Recovery, as well as the Department of Data, Insight, and Policy, are online and very much involved in moving our work on anticipatory action forward.
Great, thanks, Stuart. And to complete the picture on the DRC side, also joined by a range of colleagues, largely from the data analysis work that has been supporting the development of a range of predictive modeling tools and displacement forecast models. Handing over briefly maybe to Alex for an introduction on your behalf.
Yeah, hi everyone, I'm Alexander Kirum. I work as a global advisor and senior analyst in the Danish Refugee Council based in Copenhagen. So I basically support our organization with becoming better at using data and evidence to inform our work, and as such also lead the work stream we have around developing models to predict displacement both in the short and longer term. Thanks.
Great, thanks, Alex. All right, and we see this shaping up quite nicely. So we have a good range of UN agency representatives, quite a lot of NGOs with us here today as well. Government institutions even, that's great news. Curious to hear which government we have represented. If you're willing to come unmute and introduce yourself. Good representation from academia, research bodies as well. Some representation from the donor community as well, which is great. And then quite a lot of others, and I hope they're specifying it in the chat. Is anyone monitoring that, Alex? But yeah, I see a hand up.
They are, yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Sorry, that was just you asked to take off mute if you were from the government.
Yes.
So I'm in New Zealand, so way down at the bottom of the world from the rest of you.
Okay.
And I work with the New Zealand government in emergency management, and here just from the aspect of some of the issues that we've had around displacement from severe weather events and looking forward towards climate displacement in the Pacific region.
Great. Most welcome, Veronica. Great to have you with us. Super curious to hear maybe in one of the follow-up working group sessions, how you've been approaching the topic and what you're most curious to learn from. But thanks for joining us. All right. That leads us to this, and I'm sorry, I don't know. Yeah, if you can let us know where you're basing working from, which region you represent. Be welcome to drop your location pin on the world map. Curious to see what geographic representation we have in this group as well. So letting that stand a bit as well. And while we wait for the pins to drop, maybe I'll ask Stuart and IOM colleagues to explain a bit the journey of anticipatory action that they've walked to date, why you guys started working on anticipatory action, and why it has become increasingly a core topic for you to address.
Thanks so much. And I think there might be a dropping pin issue on our map, so we might not see it populate. But also a brief fair warning to Nick Bishop and Fatma Saeed that I will give you both the floor in about 30 seconds. But I'm happy to start from now and sort of work our way back on the journey IOM's taken on AA for displacement. The work that my colleague Nick Bodenak and I have been trying to advance over the past year or so is really focused on the data and analytics. And so we're really looking forward to the conversation in the working group breakout later to understand different perspectives on the state of play for data analysis for AA and displacement settings, and making sure that both as a data producer, but also an analytical actor, IOM is more consistently providing inputs to and supporting the development of trigger mechanisms and related analytical processes for better anticipatory action in displacement settings. This all builds, of course, on the operational reach and expertise of IOM, which I'll briefly give the floor to Nick and Fatma to say a bit more about, as that's their experience, not mine.
Hi. Sorry. Thanks for the warning, Stuart. Good morning, colleagues. My name is Fatma Said. I'm based in Geneva, working for IOM, leading the preparedness unit. On anticipatory action, as already mentioned by Stuart, what we work on is basically trying to operationalize the work being done by Stuart and colleagues. Following the data they produce on anticipatory action, but specifically looking at human mobility. Since last year or the year before, we've actually been advancing our work on foresight as well as hotspot mapping. So trying to link that also with our anticipatory action work and our responses, and basically looking forward how to develop frameworks internally to support our anticipatory action work. What we've seen in the current anticipatory action frameworks, a few of them that exist, we have a few lessons learned. So we're hoping basically by some of the work being done to develop the trigger mechanisms, what we can learn from that and how we can operationalize them and build the triggers basically to support the evidence that we've seen from the lessons. Over to Nick. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. Great to see such a huge turnout for this meeting. My name is Nick Bishop. I'm currently the acting chief of the Climate Action Division at our headquarters in Geneva. Just to complement what Stuart and Fatma have already said, I mean, we're conscientiously working with a couple of our larger missions, working in sustained humanitarian crisis settings in particular. Increasing focus on things like extreme heat. And so definitely a lot of collaboration with many of the stakeholder organizations on this call. We've been collaborating closely with the Food and Agricultural Organization, with DRC, with the Anticipation Hub, and actively attending the Global Dialogue Platform meetings, both at the regional and global level every year. So it's really great to see this grouping coming together, and it's excellent to see all of the interest. But yeah, for our organization, given the fact that we cross-cut across humanitarian development and peace-related work, we're increasingly trying to work towards identifying cost-effective strategies to see what we can do to make communities more resilient and also contribute to informed decision-making vis-a-vis mobility choices, which in some cases is obviously increasingly complicated. But anticipatory action certainly represents a major area of investment for our organization. So again, great to see the interest. And I'll hand back over to Stuart and Annalena. Thank you.
Great.
Thanks so much.
IOM colleagues, interesting to hear your story. And while we wait for answers for the next I'll put Alex from DRC on the spot to tell our story from the Danish Refugee Council. But looking at this poll, really interesting to see that we have quite good expertise actually when it comes to displacement settings, which I'm really excited to see. Also good expertise when it comes to anticipatory action programming, so good balance in the group, which I think sets us up well for really balanced discussions and to take this agenda forward. Next, we would like to understand at which stage your organization is when it comes to programming for anticipatory action in displacement settings for displacement. Are you here because you want to explore it? You see the relevance of it, but you haven't started programming as of yet. You could already be designing or piloting your first projects or be fully implementing already, maybe because indeed it's very close to your core mandate. And you've had your first pilots and you're trying to bring it to scale, or you're not yet involved and just interested to tag along and hear from organizations that are already working in this space. So while we leave this open, Alex, over to you for DRC's story of engaging in anticipatory action.
No, thanks a lot. Yes, I think we we started, you could say, basically a few years ago, and we sort of came a little bit out of the modeling work we had been doing. So of course the Danish Refugee Council, I mean, working primarily to address displacement and protection of displaced people around the world. And to support our work in this regard, we've been working for a couple of years on designing these forecast models to predict displacement, both at a national level and subnational level, and especially on some of the subnational displacement forecasting we've been doing, we started to see that there could be some opportunities to use those models for anticipatory action, which was otherwise something we really hadn't engaged a lot in previously. So around 3 years ago, we started working on this with some of our first pilots, and really saw that where we could potentially add some value to the existing work on anticipatory action was really around displacement and working sort of in these conflict areas. So we have been been working a bit on these pilots for the past few years, and are now sort of looking to really expand this work, but also take more of a sort of multi-hazard lens, but still with the focus on displacement. So looking both at sort of conflict and climate-induced displacement. I think some of the novel things we bring to the table in addition to sort of the displacement forecasting is also the quite substantive work we do around humanitarian disarmament and peace building, where we also try to address sort of the root causes of displacement, trying to get ahead of the conflict and the tensions that drive the displacement crisis we're seeing. So really seeing how can we also integrate these approaches into the anticipatory action work that we do. So that's so it's a bit of a new thing for the Danish Refugee Council, but something we've been working on for the past 3 years roughly.
Thanks, Alex. Yeah, I think you explained it very well. We approached it from the data angle, very much led by Alex and his team, to see how we can leverage predictive modeling to forecast displacement essentially. And quite quickly we saw that, this has really potential for impact. And in the first pilots we had a couple of years ago, we saw a very, very positive mitigatory impact of using forecasts to reduce humanitarian impacts related to displacement crises. So very much at a stage of scaling it currently, with currently 13 countries with multi-year programming on anticipatory action for displacement. So interesting to see this grow quite rapidly. Also interesting to see that we have 13 other organizations that are already implementing, 14, right, already implementing anticipatory action for displacement. So have surpassed kind of the stage of exploring, designing, and piloting, and are bringing this to scale. That's really great. Most of you are exploring interests, which is also very much fine, and that's why we are setting up this coordination platform and community of practice to exchange and come up with coordinated approaches and joint evidence and methodological guidance on how to really enable anticipatory action for displacement. Quite a lot of you are designing and piloting. So in the coming working group meetings, very curious to hear from all of you and your respective case studies, pilots, and so forth. And then some of you are not yet involved. You're very welcome to tag along the journey and learn from the other organizations that are already working in this space. Now, and this is a bit difficult probably you can select various options if they're relevant to your organization, but what type of context do you work most in or focus most on? Is it more conflict-induced displacement, climate-induced displacement? Obviously, they're not binary drivers of displacement, so very much we could be looking at very multi-hazard mixed settings. Are you looking more at internal displacement or cross-border movements, refugee settings? Or are you also looking at return and reintegration and solutions to displacement? So letting this run a bit as well. Thinking about who I can put on the spot now. While we wait. Anyone want to come in to highlight a bit their journey. If colleagues from the Food and Agriculture Organization, for example, are online, who actually co-hosted the first global workshop on anticipatory action for displacement with Anticipation Hub. Welcome to come in. Or anyone else. Rasaki, over to you.
All right, thank you very much. Rasaki Yunusa from the Nigerian Red Cross Society. Actually, we've not really done much on anticipatory action for displacement, but we have done on flood, and we are currently working on drought. So, and we have I have colleagues that are in migration that are working on the migration and displacement. So it's a nice one joining this working group. And I believe we're able to learn from other organizations that have been working on this, so that we'll be able to move forward from there, because from the Nigerian Red Cross is one of the projects that we are interested in commencing here. Thank you, and over.
Great, Rasaki, you're most welcome, and curious to hear about your journey as you approach climate-induced population movements driven by drought. Exciting work. I see Marta and then Sipo have their hands up. Over to you guys.
Hi, my name is Marta. It says what we have been working on displacement linked with climate and conflict, but what we are exploring now as a new path is the cross-border. And it's looking into the displacement not so much at the vulnerability level, it's more at the hazard level of what is the impact that displacement have on people. Then we have already a reaction protocol approved for Honduras for the migratory routes. We are working now in develop another one in Djibouti that is almost on the ending phase for the getting validated. But anyways, that's where we are quite interested is in looking on all the angles of displacement that can be linked into anticipatory action. Then pass the floor to you. Right.
Thanks, Marta. Indeed, so the one anticipatory action framework active for population movements that are presented in the beginning of the session is indeed actually a Red Cross protocol. And I think that was Honduras, Marta, right? The very first EAP on population.
Yes.
Yeah, great.
Yes,
so a Red Cross movement.
Yeah. And the second one, we have already approved one for Colombia for internal displacement. Displacement linked with conflict is also validated.
Great. So Red Cross movement leading the way with approved anticipatory action frameworks. Curious also to hear from you, Marta, and team in one of the upcoming working group meetings, a bit more on that. Sipo, I'll hold you off for the next Mentimeter slide, just looking at this one very quickly. So indeed, and not a big surprise, most of you are looking at multi-hazard mixed drivers for driving displacement, essentially equal split between cross-border movement and internal displacement, and then quite some of you looking also at conflict-induced displacement, climate-induced as well. So moving over, we would like to hear from you what you would like to get out of this working group. So what is your main core interest? Why are you interested in engaging with these diverse stakeholders as part of this platform? Feel free to submit your responses while we hear from Sipo. Over to you.
Thanks, Lena. Just starting off from the previous question, also to echo Marta, most of FAO's work so far has been focused on climate-induced displacement, and also working internally to see how we can incorporate conflict sensitivity into the existing protocols that are mostly focused on climatic hazards as well. So in terms of this working group itself, we are really looking forward to sort of learning and collaborating with various actors who have been working more in depth, particularly in the displacement settings, to see how we can sort of approach it and carve out a niche for ourselves also as FAO. And it's good to see that there are so many displacement experts that have joined, because I think that link is something that that we've been missing for quite a while. Having both anticipatory action experts and experts in displacement in one space will really help to move our work along. Thank you.
Great, Sipo, and nice to have you be part of this platform. Yeah, and we see this shaping up. So most are indeed here to learn, I guess, from the experiences of other organizations, your fellow colleagues in this space, but also collaboration and coordination. I think as co-hosts, that's one of our main objectives as well. I think what we've seen happen in the past within the Anticipatory Action community of practice, that we started off quite fragmented and with siloed approaches, using different terminology, different trigger models, siloed early action or anticipatory action plans and protocols. So we want to prevent that from replicating or repeating itself in the displacement space. As it is kind of a niche topic that is now gaining traction and scale, we want to make sure that we build this up collaboratively in a coordinated manner. Exchange, obviously, an important one as well. We are really looking forward to support this becoming and being shaped into a strong community of practice. Where we kind of enable collaborative action across the core pillars of anticipatory action programming. What else? Best practices. For sure, what we will do in the coming working group meetings is give space to compelling case studies from the different organizations. We've already heard from IFRC. FAO is doing interesting work. So in each working group meeting, we will reserve some space to hear from our membership and the great work they're doing. Anyone else that wants to come in with their main interest or their story to date?
Lena, maybe giving
Yes.
a minute or so for people to get the confidence to raise their hand. One thing that I didn't put on the board, but it's because it can't be summarized in a single word, is having a group where we can sort of navigate the uncertainty together. I think just over the past few months, we've all experienced in different ways, one, how fast the changes in our sector, and two, frankly, how volatile things are. It's not just how they feel, it's really how they are in different operations, regions, and at the HQ level. So already I'm appreciating the energy and engagement in this group to really continue to trade notes and compare how we're sort of handling these developments together and find new ways of delivering, because the system is changing. That's inevitable and clear. And so as we kind of navigate that complexity and uncertainty together, I think this group can really be a great resource. So really appreciate everybody's engagement.
Great, thanks, Stuart. And yeah, indeed, in one of our prep meetings, coordination calls, you did say, like, maybe one could question like the relevance of setting up such a group now, but I think now is specifically the moment, right? Because specifically as we're all facing funding crunch and restructuring processes and so forth, and the whole system is being reshaped, we think that now is the time to come together, collaborate, coordinate, and how we would like the future of the system to look when it comes to the application of innovation, anticipatory action in displacement settings. We think now's the time, and we want to make sure we do it collaboratively with all of you. Great, thanks, Stuart. All right, I think I'll let this stand. I think, yeah, interesting to see here also nexus being dropped. Very much agree. So we want to make sure that anticipatory action is well positioned along the HDP nexus, also again interpreted from the lens of displacement. So making sure that anticipatory action is deployed as a tool that can support both, can be an addition or complementary element to conventional emergency response to displacement crises, but has clear links also to prevention or addressing root causes of displacement. So looking at the key drivers that force people to move, and then also a tool that could possibly enable interim or durable solutions to end displacement. So we want to explore the different angles to anticipatory action for displacement along the nexus. I see a hand up by Siandra. Over to you.
Hi, everyone. Sandra Carvalho over here, Stuart, Alexandra, and Lena. It's lovely to see you guys again. I'm working with Marta on the IFRC working group for developing kind of a bit of actually for developing and kind of more solidifying that framework that you spoke about. While we have had early action protocols go through, as you know, it's still very novel, and the way in which we kind of want to make sure we set it in something that's a little bit more consistent or cohesive of a framework, it's getting more important. Especially seeing the level of interest and engagement that we're seeing more broadly. I think one of the reasons why I'm really interested in seeing this group and where it heads and what kind of comes out of the conversation is twofold. The first, obviously, as with many people, is this idea of best practices and, what are the innovative techniques and da-da-da. And this is normal, right, for most working groups. But what I think is going to be interesting in this case, and especially for our working groups, sorry, slightly selfish reasons on my part, is that when we're looking at our framework, we're not looking for one specific root cause or one specific place or geography or type of movement, right? I think you asked in the beginning, are you focusing on IDPs or? And for us, we're really looking at something that is holistic and scalable for kind of a very global audience. And that by itself, in the context of population movement, is a very hard lasso to loop. And so what I'm really kind of curious about is how do we see these frameworks, or what kind of methodologies are we seeing that are scalable and then still adhere to kind of that neutrality and that universality that we're kind of trying to make sure we uphold, especially in the current environment. But yeah, thanks. Nice to meet everyone.
Thanks, Sandra. Great to see you with us. And indeed, I mean, one of the things to untangle together is the potential of anticipatory action for these different types of movement, but also interesting to hear approaches of how can we maybe set up a framework or conceptual approach that does not need this strict distinguishment, between these different types of movement. So certainly really interested to discuss that in the meetings moving forward as well. I see another hand up by Laura. Over to you.
Hi, everybody. Hi, Alina. Thank you. I'm really sorry my camera isn't working for some reason, but I just wanted to take a moment to thank you, Lina, for kind of bringing us together and creating this space, and just to share a few words on the work that is happening from the Start Network side. So I'm sure many of you are aware, but within our Start Fund mechanism, we have an anticipatory component where our members are able to raise alerts in advance. And we have seen instances where this has been done in anticipation of displacement. So there's great relevance in terms of this conversation for us and that mechanism. We also have our kind of more climate DRF focused system within Start Ready. But the thing that I mainly wanted to share with this group that is particularly relevant for this conversation is the fact that we're in the very early stages of a new project looking at building a mechanism specifically focused on AA for conflict impacts, which of course will inevitably include a big emphasis on displacement. So for us, this working group is excellent timing. So we're very grateful. And I really hope that we'll be able to use this group to kind of build on and inform our design of our project, but hopefully feed our learning back into. So yeah, thank you so much, and looking forward to engaging with you all.
Great, thanks so much, Laura. Great to have Start Network be part of this. Obviously, a very relevant actor, both because you guys have been part of the core community of practice working on anticipatory action, but you obviously also represent a very diverse membership and are kind of forced to look at multiple drivers of displacement and also the application of anticipatory action to multiple settings that your membership is addressing. So great to have you guys on board. Last Menti slide, we promise before we move into the working group sessions, which areas that we're currently listing in the working group terms of reference would you be most interested in? Also, again, so we shape our focus of attention in the upcoming meetings and the working group work plan accordingly. And of course, if there's anyone else that wants to come in, still welcome to intervene. Great. So we see most interest in obtaining operational programmatic guidance that we can develop together. So clear tools that kind of deploy anticipatory action in displacement settings, joint coordinated approaches. We're very keen to work on that. A lot of interest in displacement forecasting as well, the evidence and learning side of things. A bit less interest in joint advocacy, which maybe will also come a bit at a later stage when we've kind of really demonstrated joint impact and joint work in the former pillars, but then also quite a lot of interest to adopt coordinated approaches together. Great. I think that is a good scene setting that helps us indeed understand the audience much better before we go into the breakout groups. And I think, Christina, you will explain us how we do that.
Yeah, I will open them now, and then you can just choose. We have one: displacement, forecasting, operations and programming, and advocacy and policy. You should be now, in just a second, it's opening, should be now able to join. Can you see something where to join?
Yes, and indeed, maybe a bit of an explanation. So because we expect there to be maybe more experts that are working on the displacement forecasting side of things, maybe some of you are more really practitioners that work on the operations programming side of things, and then some of you may be more engaged in M&E and evidence generation and using it for advocacy policy impact. We split into these three main groups. So please select the room that is most closely related to what you do in your work, essentially. And what we would like to do is to set kind of joint priorities per working group pillar with a focus on these sub-themes. So Stuart will be moderating group 1, looking at displacement forecasting. I will be moderating group 2, looking at operational programmatic guidance on applying anticipatory action and displacement settings. And then Alex is moderating the group on evidence generation, advocacy, and policy impact. Yeah, welcome to join us.
All right, we're just waiting for everybody to get back from the breakouts. Sorry to everybody in my group that I told to click the leave button and then you didn't get brought automatically back here, but it looks like most of you have reconnected, so that's great. Great. We've got people coming back. We'll just give it another minute.
Wow, you guys were efficient, Stuart. I see you completed all sections. We didn't manage.
They were a very focused group.
Great. Data analysts, right?
Exactly.
All right, maybe we can quickly start reporting back. Stuart, do you want to start with your group? And just a heads up, we did reserve this time slot until 12:30 Geneva time. We might be going a bit over. Feel free to drop off, obviously, if you have other engagements, but most welcome to stay on board. I will likely go a few minutes over time. But over to you, Stuart.
Perfect. Thanks, Lena. And I'll try to be efficient here. So we were broadly looking at displacement forecasting, and I expanded the scope to be also looking at other forms of data analysis for AA and displacement. And the problems identified really resonate with what we're grappling with and one of the kind of reasons why we formed this group. So concerns around the availability of not only historical data, but also data that we need moving forward, particularly given the dynamics in the sector, making sure that we have access to the data in the format that we need it, but also that we're sharing as much as possible the analytical products that we're developing and also the models themselves. This will support tackling issues around the connection of different triggers, improving the quality of models overall, and also the transparency of the analysis that underlies these models. So lots of challenges there, but with some good ideas of solutions. Moving into the middle of the board, I won't go through the who's involved because it's pretty much everybody, all the usual suspects, but good to see the different groups called out there. And I think critically, really making sure that we're grounding ourselves in operational settings, sort of at the country and even subnational level, to make sure that the data that we're producing is actually relevant to AA in those settings. In terms of how, as a group, we tackle some of the gaps I just mentioned, there is a drive toward really collective action, essentially looking at doing more work together to develop common frameworks, common approaches to data analysis, supporting more awareness of what exists and how to utilize it, and also producing what's missing together. And then you'll see at the bottom a number of joint potential products or outputs, which will guide our discussions in the months ahead. But one thing to mention there is just making sure that people are aware of what already exists. So that's where, again, one of the functions of this group, I think, will be really important to help people access resources that are available that they might not be aware of. In terms of the joint two-year vision, people can explore that on their own time. But I think really looking at data to action, that's the best way to summarize it, making sure that all the great data and analysis being produced actually leads to action that delivers impact for populations in crisis. So that, I think I'll leave it there for this group. Thanks to everybody who participated, and really excited to move forward in the months ahead on this area.
Great, thanks, Stuart. Really interesting output. Moving to my group, which looked at operations and programming, anticipatory action for displacement. How can we move towards impactful action together. And when we look at the gaps or problem statements, they're quite diverse. So a lot of questions out there, which is good because we will find the solutions and answers together. But essentially a lot of question around where is anticipatory action most impactful, right? There are so many diverse, complex scenarios where displacement comes to play. How do we deploy anticipatory action? And also how do we have a clear distinction between, you know, preparedness efforts, response? How can we have a joint clear narrative when it comes to anticipatory action for displacement? Obviously, lack of coordinated approaches. How can we make best use of the diversity we have in this group to come up with multi-sectoral action when it comes to anticipatory action for displacement? And then, I mean, even if there is early warning or forecast information available, and you said it, Stuart, oftentimes there is a gap between then actually it informing action. So how can we best close that gap, essentially? And I'm really just running through it. There were many more points, but we have the follow-up meetings to go and dive deep into those. Who needs to be part of it? Obviously, as you said, Stuart, everyone that is here on the call, the diversity of actors we have in this working group, but a strong emphasis also on local actors, right? How can we effectively support local authorities and policymakers in designing systems that have the best contextual fit, but also in primarily at-risk communities? So how do we come up with effective co-design, participatory processes to build these systems with the best contextual fit? How do we do that? Through mapping, understanding the menu of options, operational options when it comes to anticipatory action and displacement settings. So where could we add value to then inform kind of the piloting and scaling up of anticipatory action for displacement accordingly, ensuring that we effectively engage at-risk communities, local authorities, and have a clear logic to how those are effectively engaged in participatory processes. But also making sure we link our work to the wider community of practice, also around anticipatory action, other working groups out there, to make sure we don't operate in silo. In terms of the vision, we didn't get so far, so we'll have to park that and take that up in the follow-up meetings. But essentially, just making sure that whatever we move towards in terms of scaled-up action is done in a harmonized, coordinated manner, and is truly multi-sectoral and leveraging all the different diverse agency mandates we have in the group. In terms of joint product output pipeline, I think a range of guidance documents we're thinking about, but also there, we need to contextualize it around which main drivers we're looking at. Is it more conflict? Is it climate shocks, disaster displacement, or conflict-induced displacement? Then the different ranges of mobility we're looking at. Big problem, or a lot of potential ahead of us. Let's put it that way, to figure all these things out jointly. With that, over to Alex.
Yeah, as you can see, it's a little bit light, our Miro board, and we were a little bit a small group. I don't know if it was the topic or the moderator that maybe scared people off, but no, I think what we talked about in terms of the problem, I think we zoomed a little bit in on primarily evidence and less so on the policy aspects, but really sort of the often sort of binary breakdown of displacement either due to conflict or climate, and recognizing that of course the displacement often happen for a number of different reasons combined. So maybe that's really not conducive also for the evidence that we're generating. We also talked about a bit sort of how, also because with anticipatory action, I mean, sort of the evidence that we need to generate, it often comes sort of with sort of a fairly high bar in terms of what quality that needs to be produced, because it often entails having to benchmark what you're doing up against other types of response modalities, for example, emergency responses. And so that can also make it difficult to actually produce evidence that live up to that type of quality, but can also generate other issues around, for example, do no harm and these type of things, if you want to also start doing stuff like random control trial and these type of things. So one of the ways we have been envisioning sort of coming, part of this is, of course, engaging also with donors in terms of what are the type of requirements that you sort of put forward in terms of the evidence that you would like to see coming out. But of course, also a clear lead from sort of displacement mandated organizations as well as interaction organizations, actors in terms of generating the necessary evidence to influence policies. And so one of the sort of things we talked about in terms of how you could do it is, of course, to make sure that just like we break down evidence from our programming on age, gender, diversity dimensions, that also that ensuring that we always also break it down, for example, by whether people are displaced, refugees, IDPs, and so on. So really also to enhance the wider evidence around what is it actually that displacement does? What is it? How does it as a shock impact on people's lives? And there we also saw a bit of a gap in terms of having systematic evidence around that. In terms of what we could then work towards in this group was really, of course, to first of all have a bit of a mapping in terms of what are people doing already in terms of the evidence generation, what are some of the facts that are already out there that we could do some fact sheets around. But also maybe a bit come together and agree on what are the type of the indicators that we would be measuring anticipatory action for displacement up against, and so that we have that basically to fall back on and have a bit of an agreement as different actors in terms of when we do our work, what are the indicators we should be analyzing and looking at. And so we're not just collecting evidence here and there, but really have something that we can also come together and synthesize in the end. This is someone that I think has been so kind to add it after our group, so I'm not sure, because we didn't in our group actually manage to come up with a longer term vision. So I appreciate that others have added to our somewhat small mirror board.
Perfect. Looks like the most complete vision statement. Thanks, Alex, and your group. I think we have a good basis to work off of as we move into our regular working group meetings. I think we have a good joint vision of how we could work together. What are the biggest problems or questions we're trying to address? And I think on behalf of the co-hosting agencies of this working group, we're very much looking forward to start to unpack all of this together with you guys over the coming months as we roll out this group. With that, handing over, and also just to say that we will circulate kind of a summary of this inaugural meeting, and also a summary of what was mapped out on this Miro board and the Mentimeter answers. So you will receive that in follow-up to this event. But handing over to Stuart to close us off and explain the next steps.
Perfect. Thanks, Lena. And much of what Lena just said is what we will do in the coming weeks before the next meeting. So synthesizing the discussions here, sharing with you an initial sort of mock-up of the key priority areas and the vision, and then moving into the regular monthly cadence. Our thinking is to focus on having one nominated representative per organization for the monthly meetings, because we need to keep these discussions concrete and productive. And then to have, likely on a 2 or 3 monthly basis, we'll see based on interest and also just feasibility, this broader community conversation. We do want to keep this broader network engaged. This has been really rich discussion, and we appreciate everybody's time and interest. So we'll balance the monthly meetings with those broader community calls. And then, of course, we can always revise that depending on need. So we will be in touch to ask where there has been sort of multiple people from a single organization expressing interest in participating, for you to just let us know who will be the primary focal point so that we can include them on the regular invites. And then, of course, for these broader calls, we look forward to having everybody online and joining us. You should have our contacts for the co-chairs. So, of course, feel free to reach out with any suggestions or feedback on the focus and format of this working group. And other than that, I think we can probably leave it there. I'm just looking to Alessandra's orb to see if she wants to say anything final. And Lena, otherwise over to you, and I think we can close.
Great, thanks. Stuart, Anticipation Hub colleagues, any closing words from your side? Our gracious hosts today.
Yes,
Yeah,
very briefly, if you can hear me, just saying a huge thanks for everyone, IOMs, DRC, and also a great participations across many agencies. We have been going along for quite some time, so a lot of dynamism, energies. So thank you very much. It's been, I think, one of the most productive and probably neck to the conflict partition and working group. So something to measure in the next couple of months. But overall, great, and thank you very much. And I pass it over to you, Stuart and Lina, for the closing. And yeah, it's great. It's fantastic to see all this collaboration, interesting coming together. Thanks.
Thanks so much. The head of the hub has spoken. Nothing more to add. Thanks everyone for joining us today. A really good exchange. Super thankful for all the good input from your side. And yeah, looking forward to meet you in the upcoming monthly meetings. All the best.
Thanks, everybody. Take
Bye-bye.
care.
Thanks.
We hand over to Ibrahim.